This week, Elon sat down with Trump and seems to have changed his tune on climate change.
We still have quite a bit of time. We don't need to rush.
So we'll bring in an expert to discuss.
Plus, EV Phobia seems to be at an all-time high after an apartment and also Cybertruck fires.
And Tesla released a first-of-its-kind supercharging bundle, but there's a catch. All that and more starts right now. This podcast is brought to you by EVject, the only accessory that allows your Tesla to safely break free from a charging station in case of an emergency.
Yeah, more on that in a minute, even an update as the Tesla team seems to be working with EVject. We're going to break that down here in a few minutes.
All right, so let's start out with X Spaces. We had Elon Musk and Donald Trump this week. They got into it. It was a lot of people listening to this thing. I think we had how many millions now?
262 million is the last number I saw. That was just across X. Of course, these all go across various platforms and news outlets as well. So it's safe to say hundreds of millions of people tuned in.
All right, so we have to talk about this. I know there are a lot of people that are like, do not discuss politics on your podcast. And honestly, I'd rather not discuss politics either. We try to stay pretty neutral in here.
This isn't political. I don't think this is, at least. You know, the EV aspect of it comes in. There was inflation talk in this. We're not getting into that. There's border security. None of that's being discussed. We're talking about it as it relates to Tesla, EVs, climate change, everything that was discussed in that realm, which I think is pretty important.
Yes. So one of the things that Elon Musk kind of was very interesting to me was his stance on climate change, because he almost seemed to backpedal from everything that we'd heard him talk about, because in the past he's been such an advocate for climate change. You know, in the past when Trump had the committee, Elon was on it, and then he stormed out of a meeting because of the Paris Agreement.
Yeah, the U.S. left the Paris Agreement. He said climate change is real. This shouldn't be happening. It's not good for the U.S. or for the world, for America to get out of the Paris Agreement. That was in 2017. But in this call, you know, he kind of talked about we shouldn't vilify the oil and gas industry. Our energy system and our economy would collapse without it. And he's absolutely right in that sense. So over really the course of Elon being public, he's talked about how the oil and gas industry has been detrimental to the environment and how these industries have heavily lobbied against EVs. And now he's like, we've got to give them time, 50 years, 100 years, that's all good. And then he kind of goes specifically into the amount of carbon emissions in place and the amount of time that we have. The house is not on fire. He uses that analogy, saying we just have to generally move in that direction. In fact, take a listen here of what he said in regards to carbon emissions.
If you go past 1,000 parts per million of CO2, you start getting headaches and nausea. And so we're now in the sort of 400 range. We're adding, I think, about roughly 2 parts per million per year. What it means is like we still have quite a bit of time.
So I'm curious if hearing him say this was a surprise to a lot of people out there, and if it's all factual. So I wanted to talk to you about this because you are a meteorologist. You've appeared on TV for a while now.
Almost 20 years, yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to see, what are your thoughts? You've covered this a lot on the news.
I've covered climate change, carbon emissions, all of this extensively, really since 2004 or 5. And, you know, when it comes to him talking about that specifically, the 400 parts per million, and how if we get to 1,000 parts per million in the carbon emissions in the atmosphere, that's when we become nauseous, we get headaches, and we've got time because the emissions are increasing at about 2 parts per million per year. So if that stays steady, 50, 100 years, we've got time. Well, the facts are that it's not a steady increase. In fact, it was 421 parts per million last year. It went up to 425 parts per million almost this year. So about a 4 parts increase there. So already double that steady rate of 2 is that we were thinking. He even talked about if we get to 5 parts per million increase per year, then we're looking at the danger zone. So we're almost there at about 4 per year. And then you kind of extrapolate this long term. It's not just, you know, being nauseous or how humans feel unhealthy. It's really disrupting the entire global climate pattern. And 90% of our planet's excess heat is actually stored in our oceans. So all of that translates into sea level rise, of course, ecosystems disrupted. And it's far, far earlier than 1,000 parts per million. So we're talking, you know, 15, 25 years. These disruptions will be felt and are already being felt with sea levels rising along the coast.
So it is important right now to be cognizant of like your carbon footprint.
Yeah. And, you know, 97% of the scientific community agrees with me on that stance of the dramatic increase. And, you know, people talk about cyclical and having this have happened in the past as well. And it has. We've seen emissions, carbon emissions at a much higher rate thousands of years ago. But that increase, as we led to an ice age, happened over a course of thousands of years, where this is 10x faster than any sort of increase in this dramatic uptick. And, there are charts from NOAA that'll show you the dramatic uptick in the carbon emission increase. So he's talked about it's one of the dumbest experiments in human history to be pumping this much carbon into the atmosphere. Over and over. 2015, conversations he's had. 2017, very public about it. Even in the 2020s, he was public about it. Then all of a sudden, this discussion kind of just caught me off guard as a scientist.
I think it caught
that.
a lot of people off guard. I think a lot of people got into Tesla because they felt like they were doing their part for the environment. Now, I think one of two things are kind of going on here. I think one is he's talking to Trump, and I think sometimes when you talk to people that have opposing viewpoints or feel a little bit different, sometimes you kind of like filter yourself out a little bit.
Almost cater to them a little bit?
Yeah, almost cater to them a little bit. And perhaps that is sort of what's going on there. And I think that they have their discussion, then he goes back on it a little bit and wavers a little bit. So one is, he's doing that. Or the second one, which I'm hopefully is not the case, is that that's really how he feels. And, him talking about the environment was really just a way for him to promote Tesla and promote his businesses, which, hopefully is not the case. What do you guys think is going on with this discussion that was on X Spaces? Did it take you off guard? And moving on, I want to talk about something a little more positive here, because Consumer Reports just listed Tesla as having the cheapest cars to maintain both short and long term.
Yeah, the study looked at about 30 different car makers in a 1 to 5 year period and also in a 6 to 10 year period to see what the average repair and maintenance costs were for those spans. And Tesla finished number one in 1 to 5 years. The average owner was spending less than $600 to repair or maintain their car. Ours, by the way, at 8 years is under $500 as well for both our Model 3 and our Model X. And then looking at 6 to 10 years, they were at about $3,400, which also finished in top place for the cheapest car to maintain. If you're curious, second place was Buick, third was Toyota, fourth Lincoln, then Ford, Chevy, and Hyundai coming in that top 5 or 6. And the bottom three, Kim, for the most expensive cars were Mercedes, Porsche, and Land Rover. I believe Land Rover was almost $20,000 in repairs and maintenance.
Are they comparing the EV versions of these
No,
to
not all of them have EV versions, but they are not.
But Mercedes and Porsche?
Yeah, you're right. No, this was just in general. It just happened to be that Tesla ran away with it, which, as we know, fewer moving parts. We try to tell that to people.
Yeah.
This was kind of case in point by Consumer Reports, which historically some people say hasn't been positive about Tesla. And this one, the numbers,
Yeah,
said
and
what it
I'm
was.
not surprised by it, because as driving Tesla now for, about a decade, this is pretty much what we see. Really, like, the only expense that we have is maybe tires. Tires is something we see because electric cars tend to be heavier. You wear through tires more. They're more torquey, all that kind of stuff. So tires are important. But other than that, really, I mean, what's the maintenance other than that?
That's it. I mean, rotation, air filter every so often, very low.
Yeah. What has your experience been if you own a Tesla? Has it been similar to this? And were you surprised by these results at all? Let us know. And speaking of saving money, Tesla's now offering a 3-year bundle of full self-driving, premium connectivity, and unlimited supercharging.
Yeah. There's the catch, though, when it comes to this. This is a one-of-a-kind, first of its kind from Tesla to give you this sort of a bundle. And that 3-year bundle is $5,000. And it seems like a killer deal, especially if you supercharge a lot. It's available, though, only for the Model S and X. It's not available if you're a current owner of the S and X. So clearly, they're trying to incentivize new buyers. When you're ordering an S or X, you get that choice to pay $5,000 and have access to FSD and premium connectivity and also unlimited supercharging. So you ran the math on this to see exactly if this is worth it.
And it was basically like, if you spend more than $30 a month supercharging, it ended up being a great deal.
Yeah, if you're wanting FSD, exactly, because FSD is $100 a month if you opt for that. So 36 months, $3,600. Premium connectivity, $100 a year, so another $300. So you're at $3,900. And then you're left essentially with $1,100 for unlimited supercharging in a course of 3 years, which equates to about $30 per month. So if you're only using supercharging because you live in an apartment and you want FSD, this is a pretty killer deal.
Or rideshare.
Or rideshare as well. Yeah, it's a pretty good deal.
It would be a really great deal. Now, I love that they're doing these kind of bundles. And I'm hoping that we start seeing more of them. And that, if this is popular, I could see them maybe like bringing it back at time to time and then having it for existing owners as well.
Yeah, I don't see why they haven't done it yet, because it's just a click of a button for them to see who jumps on it as far as 3 and Y.
You know why they haven't done it? Because they want to make money.
Yeah.
And they think they can make more money without having the bundle.
Yeah.
So, and I want to give everyone an update on EVject, and I want to thank them for sponsoring this podcast. They are something that we use every time that we charge our car. Normally, when you go to charge your car, you're kind of a sitting duck for about 30 minutes. You're stuck there. You actually have to exit your car to be able to unplug. And with this, you could break away in case of an emergency.
Yeah, that's the critical part of it, right? It's essentially acting as a circuit breaker that you plug the supercharger into, you plug it into your car, and if there's an emergency in that, rare instance, you can just click unlock charge port, and the circuit, then the current stops flowing. You can drive away. It protects the wand as it falls. And they will even send you a replacement if you had to use it in that emergency. Works for level 1, level 2, level 3 supercharging as well. And we just spoke to them. They're actually actively in discussions now with Tesla and their supercharger team. So possibly getting something in the works for V4 superchargers as well, to be able to handle the high amperage and high rating of that supercharger. And they've also sent units, CCS versions of this, to major OEM automakers as well, to be in discussions, to work with them as well moving forward. So this was something that the community loves. There's certainly a need for. We've spoken to a lot of you guys that said that this really makes you feel safer. And of course, Tesla had some concerns about having another company and an adapter involved, but EVject is now actively talking to Tesla to find a solution there. And they're saying what's on the market, what they've sold, what's available is 100% safe. So it's pretty
I love it.
Yeah.
And I love seeing the community come together for something like this. And then, Elon responding and saying, oh, let me take another look at it. And now it just, makes the product that much better. You feel good about it. And we feel good, telling all of you guys about them, because I do think that it is a great product.
And if you use the code KimJava, you also get a 30% discount. And of course, that's linked in the description below. And anytime you use our links, you're also helping to support this channel. All right, Kim, moving on. EV Phobia is gripping parts of South Korea now, to the point where in that country, some 30 plus automakers discounting their EVs. What happened in the last couple of weeks? Essentially, a Mercedes-Benz caught on fire in an underground parking lot, seemed to have spontaneously caught on fire. It was an electric Mercedes-Benz, and it set parts of the apartment ablaze, burned dozens of cars. And what you've got to keep in mind, in places like South Korea, apartment complexes are where the vast majority of people live. So now people are very fearful about their EVs. And this actually led to the government in South Korea announcing an emergency meeting about EV safety. Mercedes even announced their batteries were using Ferrosys Energy. That's the battery supplier. And even BMW came forward with their battery supplier information as well. And Kim, South Korea's biggest automakers, which are Hyundai and Kia, they're actually launching a free EV safety battery check now for all of their owners. So you can see how kind of the media in that country displayed this. People, a lot of them that live in those apartments, very fearful of it. Now these automakers giving you a 30% discount on their remaining EVs just to be able to move these units as a result of people just being fearful because,
So do we know why it spontaneously caught fire?
We do not. That's where the investigation is currently in place right now. Again, this has kind of sparked that fear in people because nobody knows how it happened, but they know it was spontaneous and it was within a Mercedes EV that started it. And it took some 8 hours for this fire to be put out. EV fires often take an extremely long amount of time to be burnt out, and water really doesn't do much.
So that's one of the things you and I were talking about earlier, is if you took like a gas car and then you took, like a Tesla Model Y or Mercedes in this case, and you started the exact same fire in both vehicles, the electric car would be harder to put out.
It would be almost impossible in a lot of cases, to where fire officials actually, depending on the situation, will let the car burn itself out, because almost no amount of water really does much when you get thermal runaway in these EVs. And, we talked to Carl Medlock, who owns the Roadster shop out there in Seattle, and he talked about how Tesla specifically has done an incredible job managing each area of the battery compartment to kind of restrict fires being widespread and cause significant damage. But it does happen. It's 61 times less likely to happen than in a gas car. But when it does happen, it's probably like 61 times harder to put out.
We saw the Cybertruck fatality this like a week ago, and the fire was so bad in it that they couldn't make anything out. So people, now do have this fear around electric cars. And is it like a legit fear? Is it something that people should be worried about? Do you think, how easy is it to actually start a fire in electric cars? We've looked at this. We've looked at some of the statistics about this, about do electric cars versus gas cars statistically have more fires?
Yeah, I mean, EVs definitely spontaneously are maybe more likely, but even that is a long shot. Obviously, gas cars rarely just catch on fire without, while being parked and turned off, where EVs parked and turned off have caught on fire. But again, the rarity has to be taken into account, and the lack of knowledge around it and the fact that it's rare makes massive headlines, especially in a place like South Korea where everyone, resides. The vast majority reside in apartment complexes, and those apartments are kind of underground as well. The parking lots are underground as well. So the fire essentially consumes the entire unit and puts more fear into that one particular EV that's in there possibly.
I can definitely understand that fear after going through something like that. I think that's a natural response. How do you guys feel out there? Are you scared of electric cars? Do you feel like there's a fear around them with fires? Comment down below how you guys feel. If you've been holding out on the rear wheel drive Cybertruck, it is no longer on the website. And what exactly does this mean?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of discussion now, people thinking that Tesla's not going to make the cheaper version because they are still making Foundation Series and Cyber Beast. On their website now, the Foundation Series all-wheel drive available as of right now for anyone in North America. Deliveries August or September, and then October through December is when you can get the Tri-Motor.
If you're willing to pay a premium,
it's there.
You can have it.
It's ready. Absolutely. Yeah. So essentially, the perception, I guess, Kim, in the media is that the sales have gone on for so long for the Foundation Series that, people are saying there's no demand for the Cybertruck. They're not selling enough. But we know as of the Q2 earnings report that they've had about $2 billion in revenue in the Cybertruck so far this year. Tesla expects the Cybertruck to be profitable by the end of this year, which is an incredible accomplishment. And Sawyer Merritt, who's a friend of the channel, has actually went on and kind of posted a long tweet that suggested that the demand has been so high that Tesla is essentially kind of riding this wave to see how long there's going to be this higher trim interest, because still as of right now, people are going through with that order. And Wes Morrill, who's the lead engineer, chimed in from Cybertruck, chimed in and said, yes, this is exactly what we're doing. It's not canceling anything, but it's just simplifying what's there.
Yeah, so they still will be coming out with the rear-wheel drive variant. It's coming. I also think that they're kind of doing this to get rid of that Osborne effect of people waiting and trying to hold out. And why not capitalize this moment of people wanting it and they're willing to pay $100,000 for this truck? Why not get more of those orders before releasing a cheaper version of it?
Yeah, because I'm like that as well. I saw that $61,000 option for the rear-wheel drive, and we were holding out for it and still possibly are. And then we see this kind of, disappear and people are fearful. Is it gone for good? But it seems like what you're saying is probably the case. They don't want to have
they've
people
talked
waiting.
about this Osborne effect before. So it kind of makes sense with, their marketing strategies as well. And with Cybertruck, it does feel like they tried to get this version of it out a little bit early. We know that they've, don't have full self-driving, or I think it's coming like in this next week or so to people. A lot of, the aero wheel covers. There's been a lot of things where they've been improving it over time. So I think that we're seeing this now too with the range extender. It's being postponed till next year now, is what they're saying in the news this week. Yeah,
this was announced last November, of course, when the first deliveries began, that for $16,000, you would get 470 miles of range. Now Tesla's website says that range extender, which is 16 grand, will get you more than 450 miles of range, and it'll be available in early 2025. So it has been pushed back just a little bit. And to me, it's fascinating. All of this is fascinating because even the Cybertruck, Kelley Blue Book announced it was the best-selling car in America in July, over $100,000. So they're able to move this at this price point, as kind of stark and different as it is, and as much hate as it gets, people are still shelling out big bucks.
I still want it. Like every other week, I feel like we have this discussion because we borrow it a lot for our videos that we make. We have access to one if we need to make a video with it. But at the same time, like I really enjoy driving it. It's so much fun. And I feel like because it's such a polarizing looking truck, people aren't realizing that the reason that I want it is for the driving experience.
Yeah.
It drives like a car. Steer-by-wire is like amazing. It's so much fun to drive. It feels like it's just cool. It's so cool. But people look at it and they're like, oh, And
why do you think that range extender is pushed back into 25?
Okay, I have some thoughts on this. And I've said this all along. I feel like the range extender is an afterthought. And I feel like pushing it back, the reason they have to push it back is because they hadn't made it yet. They just were like, oh, people want more range. We said we'd have more range. Let's, make this thing for it.
Yeah, it'll take about a third of the bed space as well. So that's what's going to be, it'll be unique to see that. It's going to have to be installed professionally at a service center. But yeah, taking a third of the bed is going to limit how utilitarian this truck is, eventually.
I don't mind them making a range extender, and I know that it's for the Cybertruck, but I hope that they do make a product that is a range extender that you could use potentially on like the Model X. Like if we wanted to pull a trailer or something, we could, put a range extender in our sub-trunk. That would be great if they had a product like that they sold. So hopefully they do look more into this range extender option. But again, I feel like it was an afterthought for the Cybertruck. What do you guys think? Comment down below. And Tesla's not the only one that makes different changes to their cars and improves them over time, or maybe goes back on something they originally did. We're seeing that right now with Rivian with the R2. They're actually changing the port over to the driver's side to make it easier to charge at NACS chargers. Right now we have the NACS adapter that is already out for Rivian, but in order for a Rivian to charge, they almost have to take 2 spots up.
Yeah.
So they're going ahead and they're moving it. And I really like that they're listening to their consumers that they wanted this and they went ahead and moved it. And it's interesting also to see just what some of the other vehicles are doing in order to adjust to NACS. Lucid Gravity is actually going to have 2 different chargers on it, one for CCS and then one for NACS. So it's really interesting to see different automakers and what they're doing.
Yeah, I think Lucid, even on their Lucid Air, has multiple charge ports. I believe that's the case, or they've got one in the works for that as well. So it is fascinating to see that option.
And then Rivian, one more thing I noticed with Rivian is that they did finally release their kitchen, and it's like $1,400 for this camp kitchen, which is crazy to me because I feel like you could go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you could buy like a little electric, cooker thing, whatever they're called, a little camp kitchen for like $50 and just plug it in.
Yeah.
So why would you pay? Are you just paying that much money for like the name brand of it, or like?
I think, for Rivian, it just becomes one seamless product that's embedded into that area, and it just, looks and feels OEM. That's part of it. And you pay more for that. But
that's a lot more.
Yeah.
That price really was like, wow. When I saw that, I was like, are people going to be buying this? I'm really curious. Have you guys ordered one? What do you think about this camp kitchen? Why would you pay that much more? Please let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious if it has something that I missed. But, personally, I think I would probably just go to Home Depot, but I always like to save money. So that could be me.
Yeah. And speaking of camp kitchen, Kim, and dining, did you see the Tesla diner outside of Los Angeles there is coming to life? New footage coming out of it. They are now even hiring and paying handsomely for a position they have there at the diner. Yeah, this is going to be in West Hollywood, just outside of Santa Monica. It's a 61 stall supercharger. I believe this will go live sometime in the coming months or early next year.
I am so excited about this because I remember back in 2018, Elon tweeted about having this 1950s style diner, and now it's close here.
Yeah, he talked about 100 plus movie clips, historic movie clips, kind of being rolled out on his giant screen 24 hours a day at the supercharger from the best movies of all time. And that looks like it's all happening. Construction here is showing you some of the glass, some of the weatherproofing, high voltage lines that have come together. And of course, there's some renderings of what it would look like as well. But almost immediately after all of this came to life, Tesla posted this job listing.
Yeah, they're offering $285,000 a year, which is a pretty nice paying job.
Yeah, looking at an audio, video, kind of visual experience programming person there, probably for running some of these movies on command there with menu reviews and so on.
I did check, though, right before we did this, and it looks like they're no longer taking applications.
Really?
Yeah, so it looks like, I don't know if they filled the position or they just were flooded with job, people looking for jobs.
$285,000.
That's pretty good. But in LA, I don't know, it depends. We're like, it's expensive to live there. So You know, here we're like, that's a pretty good income.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother podcast, right? But what do you guys think? Are you excited for this? I would love to see one of these in lots of different cities. I hope Atlanta will have one, but I feel like Texas would be the next one that would get one of these. And, you know, hopefully Tesla will host some events at them. And it seems fun.
Yeah.
It seems fun. But are they going to install those supercharging fees when you're charging too long because you're in the middle of watching your movie?
Exactly.
You're like, I don't want to leave.
Yeah, the $2 a minute or whatever it is going to be worth
That's going to be an expensive movie.
Watching the last scene there in a movie.
Anyways, that is it for our stories this week. Comment down below if we missed anything. And thank you guys so much for coming along with us, listening to us. We are available on all major podcast outlets right now. And definitely check out our links for EVject.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Bye.
Well, you went so out of order.
Oh my God. We're not going to go in order.
The order helps.
No, it doesn't. Not me. Your bullet points are for you, not for me.
Okay. We went through all of this stuff and then you decided to go haywire.
This is how my brain works.
I know. Your brain is not in a straight line. It's
not.
It's a bouncy squirrel.
No, it's more of a pinball.
All right.